Hey everybody, welcome back to Reasonably Happy. My guest this week is Ed Latimore. Ed grew up in the projects of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His single mother, quote, always had money for weed, cigarettes, and booze, but there was often not enough food in the house, and sometimes his babysitter was a junkie who left out heroin needles. Despite the odds, Ed became a professional boxer, earned a physics degree, and is the author of an inspiring new book called Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing and the Art of Life. Welcome, Ed.
Hey, thank you for having me, man.
What a book, man.
What an introduction.
Hey, this is all from, those are your words. Before we jump into it, I want to start with where we always start. Where and when do you find yourself the happiest?
Well, right now, I'm the happiest by far when I'm hanging out with my little son, man.
How old is he?
He'll be 3 in November.
Congratulations. That's
thank
great.
you. It's a really fun time. I was never like I gotta have kids, but I was never against it. And now that I have one here, it's like, especially now that he's like no longer just like this little, cute, but like kind of not doing anything kind of thing. But like now a full-fledged toddler, like arguing and running, and I want to play tag. It's a good time. It really is a good time, and I'm just so grateful. I always think about, you ever see The Last Samurai, and he's like, he has this line where he goes, I do not pretend to understand the course of my life. I just know that I'm like grateful to have taken part in all of this, even if only for a moment. Like, that's how I feel. I have no idea how I got here. I'm just really happy to be here.
I think like 3 years old is when I wasn't one of those dads that like was like, oh my God, immediately when I saw my first kid or my second kid, right? I was like, oh no. And I was already 40 when my kid was born. So I mean, I was a grown up. I knew how to take care of myself and presumably another person. But like it took a while for me to realize how, bonded I was going to be with this kid. And then by the time they're 3, they can take care of themselves. They can do a lot of things by themselves.
Yeah.
And they've got a personality, and that's when it starts to get really, really fun.
It's a good time. Like, I've heard that like guys bond through activities and things. So it's harder for us because they really can't do anything. But like on like day 3, I'm like over him on the couch and looking at him and moving my head back and forth and making his eyes track me. I'm like, we're gonna do stuff together. We're gonna figure it out. And now it's like he's like, I want to go outside. Let's play tag. And he doesn't understand tag. He thinks it's just me chasing him. He never really chases. Oh, he'll chase me sometimes, but he doesn't understand the tit for tat. He just wants to run around and play, and that's okay because it's a fun time.
How does the way that you were brought up inform what kind of a dad you want to be?
I thought so much about this, especially in the first few months after he was born. I mean, like I was like dealing with like low level anger because I would think about I'd been critical of my mom about this when she was alive. And I was like, I don't understand why you guys would have us. And like you had 2 of us. And I don't have any memory of my dad living together, so I have no idea like why my mom and why my sister and I have the same father. But like you guys didn't learn the first time, and so you got 2, and life is hard for us. And I think about like how prepared I am and ready for having my son around and being around, and that's the biggest thing is when I think about what my parents did not have. Money is nice, right? Like you can buy things, but we have enough research to know that disadvantage, if you even want to call it that, is completely canceled out if you have a loving set of
economic disadvantage.
Yeah, the economic disadvantage is wiped out if you have a loving parents. And we can see this when we look at the earnings of people when they're 30 versus how they grew up. There tends to be a tight correlation. The poorer you are when you're a kid, the poorer you're going to be when you're 30. That's a pretty strong correlation. Unless, urban poverty is different than rural poverty. Rural people tend to stay together, so we don't see them handicapped as much. I know that no matter what, my son's not going to deal with that handicap. I like my wife. Like that's really important because you love it. You fall in love with.
That's a good start.
You fall in love with somebody you just you see a lot and have sex with. Like that's kind of like like that's kind of like Stockholm syndrome, not exactly, but like if you just like put people
Will you
together.
talk to my son, please?
Yeah.
My teenage son. He needs to know these things.
They'll just like, you'll bond, but that ain't real bonding. People trauma bond. They go through bad stuff all the time, and they're like, "Oh, we're friends." No. They're like, "Yes, I love her, but I like her. Like, I look forward to her. I'm only here in New York for 3 days, and I miss her and him. Not like as a unit, as a family. I miss that too, but I miss hanging out with her as much as I miss hanging out with him. We like each other, and that's going to be a home of love, and that's what I didn't have, and that's what really is. If I can do anything different, it's to create a loving environment where my son simultaneously never has to doubt that he is loved and desired. I spent a lot of my childhood just wondering why the heck am I even here, and he'll also have a really good example of what a loving relationship looks like, which is another thing I didn't realize until some other equally damaged girl I was dating pointed that out, oddly enough, that I had never seen a positive relationship, and that's why I was such a mess. And I was like, I don't like you, and I don't like what you're saying, but you got a point, kind of.
That's right. The last thing we want to see in a relationship is ourselves, an honest portrayal of ourselves through someone else's eyes.
But you know what? I'm really happy I heard that from her, who was a mess of a person when I was younger, than having, put the woman I'm with now through that, because, when I met my wife, I remember my very first thought, I was like, this is a really nice girl. I should probably stop drinking around her. Like, because I know like nothing really good happens when I drink, which is why I'm sober, and it'll be 12 years this December. And she's not the only one, not the only reason, but a big reason why I don't drink, because I was like, this is a really nice girl. Let me just make sure it's all good.
What's that line in the Jack Nicholson line he says to Helen Hunt, and I think the movie is As Good as It Gets. He says, you make me want to be a better man.
Yeah. Which is like,
is that was the experience?
Oh man,
you had?
and it's a great feeling. And harkening back to like when you grow up not seeing a good relationship, we model what we see, and when you in those environments, and this is probably not exclusive to the ghetto, it's probably like trailer parks, barrios, whatever your race is and your low income, high crime variation of it or name of it, you see this. But one of the big measuring sticks is, they would say, is how many hoes you get, right? Right. Who can pretty much like, are you hypersexualized? Can you
that's hypermasculinity, right?
Yeah, to the point of being a caricature, and you become like not that thing. Like a lot of guys, they can crash out. They don't have emotional control, because you don't develop emotional control. At least usually you don't in that environment. But so for me, the most important thing for a long time was, how quickly can I bed these girls? Mm-hmm. And you don't realize, when I met my wife, I was like, you must not like me. I remember thinking that, like, you don't like me. And why did I think she didn't like me? Because she was normal. She wasn't crazy. And I'll tell her this story sometimes. She's like, I was like kind of obsessed with you. I just wasn't jumping into bed immediately. And that type of, when you're used to dealing with garbage, when you come across, actually the way I describe it to people is like this: if you grew up in the city, the first time you go to the country, it smells like shit, because like you smell everything.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is terrible. Why would someone want to live out here? It's awful. After a few days, you get used to it. And your allergies are killing you when you first get out there, but eventually you normalize, and you really like the sunshine and fresh air, and then you go back in the city, what you're used to and what and you're like, wow, it's loud, it's congested, it smells, it's full of crime, everything stinks. Like, what is this place? Why do people want to live here? But that was all you knew, so you didn't have anything to compare it to. That's all I knew for a while. And then when I met this really awesome person, but I was also at a point where I was ready to change, otherwise it wouldn't work, because you can only be something for so long and suffer the consequences before you go, okay, I can change and get a better outcome or a different outcome, where I can keep going and double down and hope this thing magically works out.
All right, this is a great story, and I'm so happy you shared it. with the world through your book and with us today. But I want to go back in time, because what you're talking about, that moment where you embrace your need for self-respect and you decide that you want to be a man, a true man, not a toxic man, your own man, is a really important shift. But let's talk about how you got to that point. So, yes, I mentioned the most sensational points from your book in the introduction, because you got to get people to listen, Ed. We got to get
bring
people.
them in. Yeah.
They're like, "Whoa, what's this about?" So, tell me about the environment you grew up in as a young kid.
So I think I have, and I think a lot of people who grow up in that environment have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you
This
get?
is the projects of Pittsburgh.
In the projects. And why do you have PTSD? Because you're under constant stress, and it never goes away, and there's no safe place. In the
What's
book,
the stress from?
the stress is, the three fronts, really. And then in my case, and I know a lot of people went through this, there's the stress of the other kids in your neighborhood. And, we call it bullying, but that's just kind of a general term. I don't think it does it justice. I think calling what a lot of us go through in this environment bullying is like calling child abuse spanking. Like, it's like, technically the same thing, but it ain't the same thing.
It's constant harassment from
Constant
other,
harassment.
because they're looking for the weak to find somebody else to exert control over.
And that's all they know. And so it's all they've known, all they've been shown. It's not disincentivized in their home. If anything, it's slightly rewarded. And so you end up having to deal with it. And then you learn that the only way for it to not be worse is for you to retaliate. There's no guarantee that fighting back means you're never going to fight, but there is a guarantee that not fighting back means you're going to have to fight more. Like, you end up in these situations because guys know that you're an easy person to pick on, you're an easy target. You're somebody, if somebody needs a pick-me-upper, and they don't know it's a pick-me-upper, they just think it's get a good laugh from their friends or a nod of approval, you're the guy to target. So that's the one place.
And you talked about, de-escalation as the art of, like, you found a tool of respect was a way to avoid violence.
So if you're going to, when you work with the de-escalation ideas and then the respect, it by itself can do a lot of good and avoid a lot of problems.
My bad gets you out of some situations.
Mm-hmm. But it works even better if somebody knows that if it turns into a confrontation, they might win, but it's gonna cost them something.
We'll get to the boxing.
So that okay. There's that. And then you have
the other kids are number one.
The other kids are number one. Number two is your home life. I just think back to what it was like at home with my mom. And she was, kicked my ass. And then on top of that, there was like this weird kind of emotional, psychological warfare. I don't know if I told this story in the book, but I think I did. But it's one of the things that I tell people to kind of highlight. And there's tons more throughout my childhood. There's just this one, came to mind. My mom was a big weed smoker, and then she lost her weed. She lost it. I have no idea what happened to it. Never touched it. She thought we touched it. So she got rid of all the Christmas candy. Easter candy. Got rid of all the Easter candy. It was like, we're not having Easter until this weed shows up. And I'm like, then we're not having Easter. We have nothing to do with this. This is not us. Mm-hmm. But that was the kind of person, I dealt with. I'll tell you another story from my adulthood that just kind of hammered this home. I go over to my mom's house one day, and my sister's there, and my mom was like, guess what? I go, what happened? She goes, I got arrested. I go, what'd you get arrested for? I was like, got caught stealing food from John Eagle. John Eagle's our supermarket. And I said, why were you stealing food? And she looks at my sister and goes, see, I told you he'd believe you if I told her. Sometimes I got her.
She made it up.
I'm like, why wouldn't I believe you? Like, there's no reason, who would do that? She did that to kind of prove that I was like, I never took her aside. It's the same person. When I lost my first professional fight, she told me, she goes, I made $200 on you. I bet against you because I knew you were going to lose. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you this way?
But you did offer her some empathy in the book, and we'll talk about forgiveness later. But what was her childhood like?
Yeah, and these are the things that I came to understand as I got older. But as I'm growing up,
of course, a 7-year-old doesn't sit there and go, "Well, what's her background?" I mean,
I'm just like, why does everything make you so angry, and then why do you take it out on me? And what did I do? I'm just trying to exist. So other kids, my mom in my life, and then kind of the general school environment as well, which is a combination of, well, it's just more kids now, but now I'm dealing with kids from other neighborhoods with other issues and still fighting and still dealing with that. In middle school, which is where a lot of my memories are very clear before I changed high schools. I was suspended 15 or 16 times, faced an expulsionary hearing. This is all about fighting. One of those fights leads to an arrest because there's just so much. And I'm sitting here like,
sorry, finish your thought.
I'm like, I'm not a bad kid, but like, I'm just responding to this environment. So as I look back on that, I go, I totally understand how someone gets pulled into their environment because you almost have no choice. You almost have no way to react and respond. Fortunately, I had some foresight and got out of it, or some agency, I think is the word. But all that very stressful. I don't have a lot of happy memories of my childhood before 14. I don't have, and that's because when I look back, I never had the space to just be a kid.
Right.
It just wasn't there.
And guns and your next door neighbors were were crack dealers.
Yeah, that stuff. So I'm just talking about what the first thing that comes to mind. But because you read the book, there's all the drugs and then there's all the violence, the peripheral violence. You don't realize something isn't normal until you go to a place where I think the same. Like gun violence, just hearing gunshots every night, throughout the day, that's just normal. I don't realize like that's messing me up in some interesting ways that you don't come to appreciate until you're not in that environment anymore.
Did you know young people who got killed?
Fortunately for me, I did not spend time with people who really embraced the street life. I was much more into my video games, staying to myself. I had 2 friends. One of them moved away when I was like in the 6th grade. And the other guy, I'm not really friends with at all today anymore. He came to my mom's funeral. That was about it. So in terms of like gun violence, outright, gang stuff, don't know anyone who was killed that way. When I was 3, though, this part I don't think this is in the book. You never know, man, because you're just writing your stuff down and you get it out, you step back. When I was 3, one of my earliest memories is watching this kid that I used to play with. His name, I still remember his name clearly, Hank. Another 3-year-old got ran over and killed by a car full of gang members as they were taking the police on a high-speed chase. And this is amazing because I remember seeing this super clearly. Like right now, we were going across the street for ice cream. For whatever reason, I listened to my mom and didn't cross the street without her. He crossed the street, went, and this car was coming. It's crazy. But here's what's crazy about this to me. I brought this up to my mom when I was younger, and she told me that when it happened, they couldn't find me. I went and hid somewhere. And then I wouldn't talk about it for years. This happened when I was like 3. And then I guess around 10 or 11 years old, I asked my mom, I started talking about it to my mom like it was nothing. She was like, I thought you didn't remember. And I was like, in my mind, I can't remember not remembering it. But I guess in my mom's memory, it was almost a 10-year period where I just never talked about it, never brought it up, and then it just came up. And that
seems logical.
Your brain does some really interesting things with traumatic events that I'm learning.
And there's no therapist in your neighborhood to talk you through
through all that. There's no therapy. When there's a traumatic event or you went to someone dying or something like that, I hear that what happens a lot of times is that at the very least there's like, if it's at school or something, there's a therapist that talks to people, stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, but there was nothing like that. No one ever talked to me about any of this stuff, and you walk around with it. And the worst kind of problems, the worst kind of stress, I think, is when you have no idea what's boiling, because you're kind of functional. Like if I was like a true like wild child out there, like really breaking the laws and stuff, I don't know if anyone would have ever still like sat me down in therapy, but we could at least, draw some kind of connection and go, well, this is happening. Maybe this is what was wrong, or maybe these events affected him this way.
Sure.
But no one ever had those conversations
of course.
with me.
And showing vulnerability is a risky thing to do in your neighborhood.
Huge. I can't go, I'm sad because it is, or sad, but, maybe I wanted to be sad. I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Things start changing for you when you went to a new high school.
Yeah. That high school was the best thing that had happened to my life, and it's a watershed moment in my life, because I can't imagine what happens. I mean, to this day, like, I'm trying to think, like, I was in the year my son was born, I was 2022. I was in 2 weddings, in them, and both of those guys were like friends I had met in high school. So guys I've known now at this point longer than I haven't, and their families, they came to my baby shower or my son's baby shower. I just happened to put them there,
Mm-hmm.
But all of these people, really, they were the family I never had, and they treated me as such. And I ended up there, I just was like, I need to go to a school that isn't this school, because in our district, your feeder school is the school you go to based on your address. So I would have went to high school based on where I lived, which is where I was already in middle school and the elementary school beforehand. And so I would have been around the same people in the same environment, and I at least had enough agency and awareness to go, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I found a magnet program in our district. The magnet programs work. Like if a school offers a specific thing, like a foreign language or a vocational program, you apply to get in. You get in, and you get to go to that school. And I got into the magnet program as far away from my address as I could. Like it was an hour bus ride, 2 buses to get there. So it was an hour each day, and so I was spending all of my waking hours away from the house.
It was a whole different world. What did you see there?
Well, the first thing that stands out to me when I think about this, one was how many kids were like not trying to fight. like it's a weird thing, but I remember having a convo with some kids, and they were like, and I was like, how many fights you been in? They're like, I've never been in a fight. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So, and then as I get to know my friends and all, I've realized that most of them are in 2-parent households, and even if they're not, like it's like a divorce, and they like see both of their parents on a regular basis. I thought that was really cool. And just, I was the only kid in my class. I was thinking about this recently because it was part of the talk I was prepping. I was the only kid in my class from the projects. That's not the only one in the school, because Shenley, was a feeder school for some of the areas in the neighborhood we went to. Anyone listening or watching who's from Pittsburgh knows where the old Shenley High School was, and it fed some of the kids from the Hill District projects. But the classes I was in specifically, there were no other kids from any housing project, and no other kids from my side of town.
Were there black kids there too?
There were,
but there were suburban black kids.
Well, that's the other thing too. Not a suburb, just another part of the city.
Gotcha.
Just another part of Pittsburgh. There were some, not as much, not as much as white kids, but Shenley was a pretty diverse school. I may have included the demographics in a book. I know I looked it up because it blew my mind.
I think you did. I don't remember them specifically.
The school was like 57% black, 58%. and then like almost 20% like non-white or non-black, because we had the English as a second language program there. And so any kid that came who did not speak, English as their first language, and they needed to up their game,
Right.
they went to that school.
What an incredible, thing that your desire for more. Not to say that people who grow up in your situation don't want to improve their lives, but your initiative to improve your life gave you insights into the fact that there could be another way to live.
Yeah, and I think people have a big problem attributing any success in their life to luck, because they think it robs them of all the work they did to put themselves into a position. And they're not mutually exclusive. You can have both.
Yes.
I recognize 100% that whatever it is about the way I was born and even the when, but the how and who I am, that gave me that ability to go, let's be curious and see what else is out there, and then let's go apply. I could have had a mom that was worse. Like to get into that school, my mom still had to apply for me. She could have been like, I ain't doing shit. Like, but she still went and did that extra mile and got me into that school. And not extra mile, she just had to wake up and go apply instead of let me get. So these are little things that.
Well, if she'd been addicted to something worse than weed, she wouldn't have made that appointment.
Could have been way worse. And that's kind of like a gratitude you end up carrying.
No,
coming
it's
to
healthy,
those
of course,
circumstances.
yeah. So you go to college, you start partying, you start going down the wrong path, drinking too much, not going to class.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't ready to be in college.
And you were playing football, right?
I was playing. I went to a D3 school, and I didn't really. I mean, I knew, D3 wasn't really any money. Not really. There is no.
There is no money. None.
Right. The way they sold
They didn't
it
have NIL for your D3 program.
No. The way they sold it to me was that I would be getting some aid to go, and that aid I thought was based on me playing football. Nah, that was just a straight loan. I shouldn't even have been at that school. Like academics, I shouldn't have been at the University of Rochester. But the guy, I can't remember his last name, but I remember his first name was Jason. The recruiter. He was from the area, so he knew people. And University of Rochester, they were making a big push for diversity. And I was like, I'm about to look. You're not going to get a kid like me from my background at the U of R. So they were like, let's bring this guy in. Nah, I shouldn't have been there. And not just from what people think about in terms of learning capacity, because I think at the very least at this point in my life, assuming it was always here and nothing like changed in my genetics, I have a capacity for learning. But that's got to be fostered and developed, and it definitely wasn't fostered and developed at home. And in this new environment with all this alcohol and girls and freedom, it ain't going to be fostered then either. I just wasn't emotionally ready. But it was I'm trying to think, what did I get out of that experience? I got to experience what I got to see like how bad I was with money, because my dad died my senior year of high school, and I got a life insurance check from.
How much was it?
$55,000. And in 18 months, I was overdrawing my account.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I bought. I wish I could tell you. It's not like I was paying rent. I didn't put any money down on that tuition.
Well, how would you know? Nobody's taught you about money to this point in your life.
It's kind of sad. It's not kind of. It is sad. Like it's awful.
Well, it's no mystery when you see these pro athletes signing these big contracts and then they blow it, and then they're broke 5 years later. It's like, well, how would they? If you don't teach somebody by example and by repetition how to handle money, how are they supposed to know what to do with it?
Not only
when
that,
the world, all their buddies are looking for a handout. Every credit card will give you as much of a limit as you want at a 27% interest rate. I mean, there's a million ways to lose your money.
Not only that, but when you lack for so long and you have, and you don't lack, oh, it's a vicious overcorrection in the sense that like your brain is still working from a scarcity from a scarcity angle. And kind of a fun fact here, I wrote a different book entirely to start. That was not a good book. I mean, it was a good book. I mean, I learned a lot and did a lot of research, but it just didn't kind of work because I realized I'm writing a memoir in the second draft, and that worked. But in that first book, there's a chapter where I look into the psychology of poverty and why people not just stay poor, but why they come into these lump sums or landslides of money or windfalls, and then go poor again. Because the same thing happened to my mom. My mom, 2019, when did I graduate college? The second time, the right time. 2018, got into this massive car crash, almost killed her. And she ended up winning a settlement of she ended up winning like $152,000. When my mom died, she died in 2021. So it only took 4 years, not even 4 years really, between when she got the check and everything. She had not only no money left, but she like owed a credit bill. And so it got me thinking. I was like, you did the same thing I did, years ago.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens when you're poor, poverty sends like a stress signal. And stress, triggers your amygdala, and that's like the fight or flight thing. And as your amygdala is fired up, your prefrontal cortex, that thing dials down. That prefrontal cortex, that's the part of your brain that's like, hey, let's make a plan, and hopefully it's a good plan, right?
That's not fun.
Oh, right, but that part goes down.
Yeah.
And then these stress signals from poverty, they're chronic, they're long term, and those changes, they're not permanent, but they are very resistant to change once they're set in after that signal has been in for so long. So even though you might have resources now, you still think and behave like a poor person, and poor people make decisions based on immediate gratification because they have to.
Yep.
And so even though you're in a position to plan for tomorrow, you suck.
If your car's broken down and it's going to cost $800 to fix, and you can't get to work unless you have your car, you're going to take out a loan. I did this, when I was a young person, right out of college. Like, your car breaks down, you need a car to get to, to work. You're going to pay $800 to Vinny the mechanic to fix it. Okay, great. Well, you do that one time, you think it's going to be over. $800 turns into $1,200 the next month, and before you know it, you're in the hole. And then you're borrowing money to pay interest on some other credit cards that you've got.
It's a vicious. I got caught in that payday loan cycle once, man.
Yeah.
It is. It's hard to understand. It's
designed to keep you poor. It is an anvil around, chained to your leg that will keep you in the depths of debt-ridden poverty.
And you'll never, not never, but like, man, revolving credit, the more I learned, man, revolving credit is a motherfucker. like, wow. Because like the only quote unquote positive, I can't even call it that, it's just not as big of a negative as student loan debt, is that you can dissolve it. You can file for bankruptcy, or just like, hey, I can't pay this. You're gonna have to shut this down. Yeah. So they stop coming after you and they can't take legal action. But like with your car, you can pay that thing off, and then it's your car. Now you might need a new car later, but you get what you pay for. It's there. But that revolving credit, not only they just keep charging you. They charge you for the money you owe. That is, and that's something you don't understand growing up, because I didn't even understand what a credit card was. I remember the first time I got my bank card, bank account,
free money.
I overdrew my bank account because I was like, oh, I can just keep taking money out. Okay, that sounds so stupid as I say it out my mouth, but I didn't know any better.
When did you start boxing, and why did you start boxing?
I started boxing at 22, so relatively old. And I started because I wasn't doing anything else in my life. And And that was like, okay. Like, but I wasn't like moved to like go make these massive changes. But I was being a bit of a hater. I was talking trash on college all the time to anyone who would listen.
Tell me about the fox and the sour grapes.
Oh, the fox and the sour grapes, you know. So I had failed out of the University of Rochester, and really, I say I dropped out, but that's because, you know, I was looking at the writing on the wall. They were about to kick me out, and I said, let me just get ahead of this and get out of here. Move back home, homeless for a little bit, and then I get a job. I think it's Starbucks. Well, GameStop, and then Starbucks. But I'm talking trash on college. I'm like, college is pointless. You can become successful without it. You know, it costs all this money. It's craziness. Now, to be fair, I still hold many of the beliefs I held then about college. The difference is I got a degree in physics. Now I can't really say shit to me. It's it's the truth. At the very least, my opinion holds weight beyond a sour grapes feeling. At least no one can blame me for that. One of the people I'm always saying this to is my girlfriend at the time, her mother, who happened to be a professor of biology at the University of Pittsburgh. And, you know, to her credit, she put up with me trashing her profession way longer than I think a person would. As I'm older now, I also realize it was because I was probably just some 21-year-old kid who didn't know what he was talking about. Because, like, if I hear a 21-year-old, first of all, I can't understand most of it anybody under 25 is even talking about. I don't even feel that old. Like,
how old are you now?
I'm 40.
Okay.
But when I'm at the gym, and every now and then I'll go to the gym, a gym to work with some guys, and there'll be people in their early 20s, and they say stuff, and I'm like, is that even English? Like, what the heck does that mean? I'll tell you when I really felt old, man. I was showing a guy some at the gym, and then I said to him, what if I told you, right? Playing on that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus goes, what if I told you that everything, and they made a whole meme about it. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, what, you ain't never seen The Matrix? He's like, what's that?
Yeah.
I said, whoa, what? He's like, what's The Matrix? I'm like, you never heard of The Matrix? He goes,
it was like 1999, dude.
Right.
26 years ago. That kid wasn't even born.
He was 14. He goes, wait a second. He goes, isn't that movie where everything's not real? I was like, that is one way to describe it.
You should have just asked him if he'd seen Casablanca. I mean, like, it's about as relevant to him.
Missed by an inch, missed by a mile, right? Yeah. But I as I was saying about how I started boxing, you know, I said to she said to me, she goes, all right, you know, let's pretend you're right and college is worthless. Why don't you tell me what you've done with your life over the past 4 years besides show up to my house and eat my food? Because, I mean, that's how I was surviving. I was go over there and either eat lunch, dinner, and breakfast on the weekends, and on the weekdays, at the very least, it was dinner, because I definitely didn't have enough money for all those meals. And, you know, and then she threw me out, and she was right. She was like, but she was right. I had no problem admitting she was right, because the kind of the way I grew up, at least my reaction to a lot of the way I grew up, is that I don't have time. It is not safe to entertain delusion. So I thought about what she was saying, and she was right. So I said, okay, let's find a place to put some sweat equity in, because I started to feel bad, because I said, if I died today, what are they gonna say about me? What are they gonna say? Like, what can they say I accomplished? I didn't do anything. I graduated from high school. I played a little bit of football. That's like what my unique claim to fame. I hadn't done anything. So I said, all right, you know, let's try. I was looking at like what I could do with my life.
Right.
And I came up with two things, because I wasn't going back to college, and I just wasn't going back to college. I came up with two things. One, I could enlist in the Army, but that was right around 2008. That's like right when we were invading Iraq, and I was like, you know, don't know if I want to change my life that much.
Yeah.
So I also was watching YouTube. This is back when YouTube just came out. And I really liked the fight videos. And I said, that looks like something I could do. That's just guys punching each other.
Yeah.
And I'm not a bad athlete. Let's go try this. And so I found a boxing gym and just didn't quit.
When'd you find out you were good at boxing?
I don't know if I'm good now, man.
Well, you were good enough. Listen, what's interesting about what I found myself thinking about, there's similarities between boxing and comedy. It's an individual thing. It's actually one-on-one, so it's not quite individual. But, like, it's something you say, I'm going to go do this thing. There's, like, organizations. There's, like, structure to the thing. And anybody can sign up for a boxing class in a gym. Mm-hmm. But you keep going up and up and up. You keep going up different levels. You make it past these different gatekeepers. But there's very, very little room at the top, you know?
Yeah.
And you got pretty close. You probably got into the top 1% of all boxers who've, you know, in the country, right? Or even smaller than that, right? But
I will, yes.
But it's an unglamorous ladder that you make no money doing. You take more hits than comedians do.
Yeah, you know, now that you mention it, man, I've always said it's kind of a dumb thing to do, but now you really make me go.
But you were good. You were good. People like, you know, what were you good? What was your best attribute as a boxer?
So early in my career, my best attribute by far was that I was dedicated.
Oh, okay.
Like, one of the things I said when I first started, before I did a single round of sparring, I said, I'm not going to quit this. If I stop boxing, it'll be because I got injured. Or I become friends with somebody in the sport whose opinion I trust, and they tell me this is not for me, and I trust them. But that condition would take a little while, and as long as I didn't get injured, I just stick with it. So that was my first, and that carried me way further. That as a base carried me. I mean, it carried the entirety of really a lot of my progress. So when I first started, every day I got to the gym, except Sunday. No one trains on Sunday. Well, I won't say no one, but I've yet to meet someone that is in the gym on Sunday. You got to have some time off. So I was at the gym every evening, and then I would take every fight. There are a lot of guys, you believe this, some guys are afraid. I was not afraid. I'd spar with anybody, and I'd take any fight that came my way, any opportunity. It didn't matter. My fourth fight, you know, the way amateur boxing works, to really appreciate this, is 0 to 3 fights you're considered sub-novice. It's sub-novice rules. The rounds are only 2 minutes, or there are
I think 3 rounds, 2 minutes.
3 rounds, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Then from 3, and you're only matched with sub-novice guys. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then from 3 to 11 fights, you're novice. Novice is, I can't remember, but I think it's 3 3-minute rounds, but you're still only matched with novice guys.
Yeah.
Then there's open class, anything after 11 rounds or after 11 fights. And then it's open up. In my fourth fight, so barely my first novice fight, I fought this guy, Wesley Triplett. Wesley was the Cleveland Golden Gloves champ. He is 6'6", like 230, freakish athlete, built like Randy Moss. If you put boxing gloves on Randy Moss. And it's a small miracle he didn't knock me out. But I lost that fight the first time we fought. But those were my big attributes: dedication, courage. I wasn't afraid of getting hurt, and I wasn't afraid of working hard.
Yeah.
As I got better and I got to see what it took to learn how to box, not just be in good shape and take hits, I took that same mentality of being dedicated, and I turned into a student of the game. And it really helped because my coach, Tom Yankella, one of the ways he taught was he used to have this he still has them. They're just not in the gym anymore. This massive case of VHS tapes
Yeah.
of different fights, and we'd watch fights and study and learn from those fights. I had another guy work with me. This guy, Chris Williams. He looked at my film and he was like, "You can't. Your footwork is terrible. You don't have anything. You're not doing." So he spent all his time working on my footwork, and I went and did the drills, and I really have a high tolerance for monotony.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you need to get good at anything.
So, but this whole time you're still drinking pretty heavily every day.
Yeah.
And so your life doesn't really change until you quit the booze.
That is probably, we look at it like a little graph.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's I would say that's a big inflection point. That's probably the biggest one. Yeah, I was gonna say when I won the state Golden Glove title, and then went out to Cali. But even still, I'm still being really held down. At that point in my life, in fact, just kind of backtrack because people listen. You read the book,
yeah.
So I stick with amateur boxing and become very good.
Yes.
And win the state title, which takes me to the national title for the Golden Gloves. There I faced this cat, Dominic Brazil. Anybody listening who are watching who knows boxing, that name will sound familiar because he goes on to represent us in the London Olympics. So that win ages like Fam Juan and brings in all these other opportunities. But one of the opportunities that brought me initially was I got brought out to Los Angeles for almost 2 years as part of this group. They were paying the fighters, and they were sending us everywhere for fights, and I was getting top level training. I could just focus on fighting called All American Heavyweights, and that was awesome. And that was a really big point in my boxing career because it gave me the chance to really develop with no other distractions. But even at that point in my life, it was like trying to fill a bucket with holes in it. It doesn't matter how, and the holes are pretty big. You can only pour so much into it so fast before you break the bucket. So there's a limit on how fast you can pour stuff in. But you're also losing a lot because you still got the holes. I hadn't patched up the holes in my bucket yet. When I patched the holes up in the bucket, you're right. That is when real progress happened.
What were the holes you needed to patch?
I needed to stop drinking. Now, and this is what I tell guys when I talk to them about their sobriety. There are a boatload of reasons why you're drinking. Let's worry about those after we get you to stop. Because we could be working on them and you're still drinking. And while you're doing that, every time you take a swig, you introduce the possibility of something life-altering happening that will make all of your other work for naught. No one cares if you got sober because you've been in jail for 10 years and you can't drink. Okay? So let's get you to stop drinking and we'll figure out the why later. But we have to stop the bleeding. Otherwise, you might bleed out before we can fix the real problem. Okay, so once I fixed that, once I stopped drinking, I immediately, because I'd realized every failure I had in my life, and every fallback, every bad relationship, I realized the common denominator was alcohol, and I used to say things like, "Oh, you don't like me while I'm drinking. Well, you're definitely not going to like me sober."
That's great logic.
Oh, man, that's addict logic. It gets better. I used to say, well, when you look at my life, 95% of it is great. But that 5%, that's only caused, those problems are only caused under the influence of alcohol. Whether it causes the problem or exacerbates one that I started while I was sober. And I used to say that as a justification for why I can keep drinking. Not as like, hey, maybe if you stop drinking, you can have 100%. It'd be like, I'm good with 95. And maybe that 5%, this is back before I understood expected value. That 5% is a negative, and if I have an event that's really negative, it wipes everything else out. Like getting pulled over while drinking or something, or crashing.
What's the worst punch you ever took?
the one that knocked me out.
I saw it on YouTube.
Man, you know what's crazy about that? First, I couldn't watch that fight for like 8, 9 months.
Talk about what the fight is. This is a big deal. You got it. You're on Showtime.
Yeah, so I fought.
You know, Jim Lampley was here a few months ago.
Oh man, Jim Lampley, the voice of boxing. There's a new generation that just won't know because all the big players are out because no one evolved, no one adapted, and now Netflix and DAZN, they are in the game, and people, they figured it out. If we just charge a low subscription, we don't have to charge people $80 for pay-per-view.
For pay-per-view.
And so everyone will watch these pay-per-views, and we'll also have more money over time, which this is a bit of a side note, but this is the direction boxing needs to go in, which to operate more like a constant league where we plug fighters in. That's similar to what the UFC does and what all the major sports do. You know, yeah, Patrick Mahomes will be gone one day just like Tom Brady is gone, and they'll just find somebody else and the system will keep going. But that's a different rant. But as far as the sport goes, as far as my the hardest punch I ever took
is a Showtime fight.
A Showtime fight. I'm fighting Trey Lippe Morrison, who's the son of Tommy Morrison. He was the WBA champ. The original Great White Hope, right? Or hype, or whatever they say. And so I'm fighting. I'm undefeated. He's undefeated. It's kind of a pick'em fight. I'm a lot more skilled. But look, man, it's heavyweight boxing. You get hit with a good shot. Doesn't matter how skilled you are. And he hit me. It took me a little while to understand what happened because when it happened, I thought I slipped. That's how crazy the shot was because the shot came and he took it around my guard and I didn't move my arm or anything to take some of it. So I'm just holding my arm up and it just comes around my arm like it's not even there.
It's so fast on YouTube, I had to stop and go back and forth to try to see it. You can't even see it.
So you're watching it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm living it real time.
Some guys right.
And I thought I slipped. Like to this day, until if I'd ever watched it, I would be telling people all day I slipped. Yeah. But now we can just go back and rewatch it.
Yeah.
Because, and here's what's crazy about this. People ask me all the time, what's worse, getting hit in the head or the body? When you get hit in the head, like the fact that I think I slipped means that I didn't feel any pain.
That's crazy.
My nervous system just got disrupted. You get hit in the body though, you got hit in the body. That it stays with you. It hurts so much. But that shot right there, what he did afterwards, that was just cleanup. I knew at that point I knew I fell, but I wasn't. That first shot.
So what I liked, I liked the story. So the ref stops the fight. You lose the fight. It's a short fight. It's not what you wanted.
Not even close.
It was a bad fight for you. And the next morning you're having breakfast, and you say to yourself, "I'm going to be okay." Basically.
Well, not at first. At first, I got up like I let the girlfriend, wife at this point, wherever you want to throw her, I let her know I was okay, but then I turned my phone off, man, because the internet is fast. I didn't want to be I didn't want to see the taunts on the internet that I'm sure were there, and so I'm just sitting there at breakfast, and because I'm not checking my phone, I decide to do something I never do. I start watching the news. And the reason I don't watch the news is because it's just full of negativity. Turns out that's what I needed that day. Because the negativity I saw put things into perspective. The first story I saw was about Aleppo, Syria, and the bombing that took place there, and it looked like something out of Fallout, man. Like I didn't even know. I guess there were people still living in the city, and when you look at these images, I'm like, holy shit! Like bombed out and depleted. It was bad. And then the next story was about. I hope I get this right, because I wrote it down and did research to remember. There was a shooting in Charlotte where a cop killed somebody, and they were, because the fight took place in Miami, spelled like Miami, but pronounced Miami, Oklahoma. they're showing that story that happened in Charlotte to contrast and draw comparisons between another police killing, well, a police shooting that killed somebody that had just happened in Oklahoma. I was like, wow, that's 2 for 2. We are in bad shape. And the third story was the worst one. The night of the fight, some guy up in Washington State went into a mall on a shooting spree. Killed, I think, 5 or 6 people. One of the people he killed was this 16-year-old girl who had beat cancer. And so, his first name is Patrick something. I can't remember. It begins with a C. You can look the story up. But I'm sitting there looking at that, and I was like, okay, so all that happened to me was I lost a fight. Like, I can go home and go do something else with my life or get back into the ring, but everything is all good. Like, these people got real problems. No matter how bad I feel right now, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
And the people I know are still alive, and that's all good. And then it took me back to when I was training out in Los Angeles. These guys got all these money and connections, and LA is where all the stars live.
Yep.
So the guy, Michael King, who was running, who funded everything, and that's Michael King at King Vision, that was doing Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy,
Sure. Yes.
Oprah, that guy. He has Randy Couture come in and talk to us as we're getting ready for the men's tournament in Colorado that year, which was one of the Olympic trial tournaments. He has him come in and talk to us. He's talking to us about everything in his career. And somebody asked him, like, how does he deal with a loss? Or how did he deal with a loss when he was in the octagon? And Randy goes, look, man, like, if the worst thing that happens to you in your life is that you lose a fight, it is a pretty good life, man. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't stress about it too much. And so I thought about that. At this point, it had been almost 2 or 3 years later, and it really brought that back into my consciousness. And then I started passing that advice on to other fighters who went through the same thing. So that fight, that hard punch, really opened up. It's just an open up another area of your heart that you don't realize you have, which is the part of you that has gratitude and perspective.
So, and for the sake of time, I just wait. So you ended up getting your bachelor's degree in physics.
Mm-hmm.
You were in the National Guard, right? But now, what are you working on today? What is your mission today?
My mission today is to use my story, because it's my story, right? So I don't think there's anything special about it, right? This was a big problem, right, in my book, because the agent was like, that's not the story you need to tell. Here's what you need to tell, which is the story we have now. The story I was trying to tell was that one I was talking about earlier, where I had another book entirely. And then I write the draft, and it's still an issue with the agent, or not with the editor. He's like, this is the story you need to tell, not the other one. I'm starting to have faith in the story, so now I really try to share it consciously through speaking to different schools and organizations that work with youth, so they can see, so kids can see, like, wherever you're at now, there is a way past it, and it will take work and agency, but you can never down and out. And that's what I do through my content. That's what I do through my speaking. Interestingly enough, that's why I'm here in New York City in the first place.
Yeah.
To events, the one at Pace University, to speak on this very idea, and using my background and my story to illustrate, okay, this is what happened. And look, like I said, a lot of people they don't like to talk about luck. I fully acknowledge that it could have been worse, but that doesn't mean that I did not take actions and have a certain perspective, and you can learn those from me.
What would you say to 15-year-old Ed Latimore? Because there's millions of them out there today in the projects, or poor people without agency, or feel that they don't have agency. What would you really want them to believe in?
If I could talk to me, and just thinking about what I think or thought at that time, I would remind me that no matter what happens, I still have to live, and I still have to exist, and I have to exist with every choice I make, good or bad. So look, you might not always know the best thing. I think it's very hard for us to know the best thing to do or the right thing to do when we're younger. Like right and wrong, sure, but in terms of optimal, very hard. But what you absolutely know is when a bad idea is a bad idea, and if you can just avoid the bad choices, you'll always be in a position to do something with your life. That's I think back the three main ones, four if you want to be technical. Three: do not get arrested. Do not have a child with. I mean, I won't even say the wrong one. Just don't have kids yet. Wait. I didn't. I had my kid when I was 38 or 37, somewhere in there. And you cannot take out. We were just talking about debt. That debt will ruin you, and it will make it impossible. And most of you won't have the talent or the ability to do something to get a large enough sum of money quick enough. They count on that to get out of it, right? You avoid those three big things.
Each of you're talking about autonomy. Mm-hmm. You're talking about these things that steal, and we're talking about men. We're talking about boys here specifically, young men. Young men need to develop into fully developed brains at 26 or whatever it is, and they need to be autonomous. You can't be autonomous if you're in prison. You can't be autonomous if you're in debt. And you can't be autonomous if you have a kid when you're 17 years old.
Especially with the wrong. Oh man, look, I have nothing. Look, my son, especially since by the time he's 18, I'll be like, I think 58. If he came to me, I was like, I think I want to have a kid. I'm like, look, man, I'm just like,
Nobody
I don't think
thinks they want to have a kid when no guy does anyway. Girls might be saying, I want to have. Well, I'm going to get in trouble if I keep saying that, but.
But the problem is when you have kids that young, you don't have a support system. You're likely not doing it because your parents were like, "Go do this." It was a mistake, and you don't know the other person. They might grow or change. There's so much that comes with it that you end up in this bad situation. Let's forget the child support aspect of it and how it'll be very difficult to get ahead. You still have to psychologically deal with a person. You don't for 20-ish years, 18 to 20 years.
18 years.
And that's 18 years when they're born. And when I count the 20, I'm counting all that. So you want to avoid that. If you can if you can avoid those three things, you're always going to be in a position to have some agency to develop and figure out what you want to do. It might take a little while and it might be difficult, but life does not get easier with a criminal record, with debt, and with children, with people you didn't want. Now, if it's with someone you do want, you guys stay together. You can really work and figure that out. It usually ends up becoming an asset.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about forgiveness real quick before we take off.
Mm-hmm.
How has forgiveness strengthened you as an adult?
It's given me better understanding of people. And that's important because you have to live on this planet with them. And just forget your general living environment, just that we share the planet with other people. A lot of them are going to hurt you, and they're going to be people who you didn't think would hurt you. In my case in particular, I think a lot about all the things I had to understand and figure out with my mom, and all the things she did that made me angry, and all the ways she hurt me. But I also had a choice. I could be angry and let that anger seep into other things I did and affect my relationship with her while she was alive, which would affect other relationships. Or I could figure out how to forgive her. Now, when I say forgiveness, a lot of people push back and they're like, "You just gonna let it go? You just gonna let it go?" I'm like, no, I'm not just letting it go, but I'm not gonna let it control me either. You have to figure out a way to deal with the pain that cannot be balanced in the books. Like when we talk about like forgiving a debt, like what are we saying? It was like, okay, well, I know you ain't got it, so I'm going to stop coming after it. That's pretty much what debt forgiveness is. If we take that same idea to give up without expectation, I'm going to give up all these negative feelings I got without expectation you're ever going to do something to make them right. Getting that idea, it frees you from expecting people to do something about it. It puts agency back in your court. And the example I always use to talk about this outside of myself is like, look, there's one of them guys that went out there and, and shot up a bunch of places and people. We can only put them to death one time. They may have taken 7, 8, 9 lives, more than that. We can only kill them one time, put them in jail for the rest of their life. What do we want to do about the pain they caused in the world out there, and what those people have to suffer and deal with, the survivors? They got to figure out something to do. I tell you what's not going to help them. Murdering the corpse, another time.
Yeah.
They have to figure out how to deal with it. It's a tool for not being haunted by ghosts. Not being controlled by a ghost. Sometimes I'll see my sister do something, or I'll think about ways I was set back, and I can feel myself, or even thinking about my dad, I'll get angry, but then I remember, what am I going to do with this anger? What am I going to do with it? Take it out on my son, take it out on my wife, take it out on my friends? We can't do that. So I got to process it, and I got to let it go. And then as far as like how we do that, real quick, I always start with looking at the person and going, okay, let's pretend I was in their shoes. Would I have behaved any differently? People go, yeah, I would have behaved differently. Like, no, put yourself in their shoes. And that means with their knowledge and their capacities. And yeah, I'm basically the same person. I would have done it. And they're like, okay, great. And then the next thing you got to realize is ain't none of this shit personal. Like, really, it ain't personal, even when it looks that way. All a person is doing is what they think will make themselves feel the best, and they're doing it. If you want to assign a negative emotion to it, it's selfishness. They're just not thinking about you. Like, it's not personal, even if it seems that way. Like, I could take it personal that my mom, stole from me once. I could take that because she took the money from me. Or I could go, well, my mom probably, and she told me this, she goes, well, I felt like I helped you get this money. She took some of the money I got from my dad's life insurance. She's like, I felt like I helped you get that money, so I was entitled to some of it. I don't agree with it, but her thought process isn't like, I'm going to make you angry. Yeah. I'm going to do something mean to you.
She's only acting with thoughts about how she's
in the weirdest way possible, right? And this is a hard one for people to get. Every heinous act that a person does is rational to them in some way.
Yeah,
completely rational. When you can get yourself to understand their thought process, it's very hard to stay angry. You're not excusing it. A lot of people have issues with forgiveness because they think they're going to open the gates for more of it. No. I think if you don't understand why people behave a certain way, you're going to end up creating circumstances to make more of that behavior occur. So we need to understand why it happens. Deal with the justice part, which is, you stole, you're going to have to, or you killed some people, you're going to deal with that. But then for your own issues, you got to let that go. And you got to figure out how to let it go. I can't just say let it go. There's a process.
Well, I appreciate, I'm glad your life is going so well right now. I'm glad you like your wife. Yeah. I assume she likes you too.
I'm telling people that love is important, but like will keep you together.
Dude, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. My guest is Ed Latimore. He is the author of the book, Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing, and the Art of Life. Where can people find out more about you, Ed?
Well, the great news, unless your name is Ed Latimore as well, is that I'm Ed Latimore everywhere.
There you
Ed
go.
Ed Latimore on Twitter, Ed Latimore on Instagram, Ed Latimore on YouTube.
Latimore.
I appreciate you spelling it correctly. Yeah. You know how many people put 2 T's in it?
A bunch, I'm sure. Well, just to make it easy on our listeners, even the ones who can't spell, we'll put a link in the show notes. Thank you for sharing your story with the world, Ed. It's very nice to meet you.
Hey, you too, man. I really appreciate you having me on your platform. I never take that lightly.
Cool. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.